that? What you gonna do, brother? Oh, yeah! Are you ready? Hey, yo. And that's the bottom line. Shut that control into a nosedive. Woo!
Well, all I can say is someone's been eating their vitamins and saying their prayers.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Strategy, my Oklahoma ass.
You're next.
What? Oh, that's the Goldberg taking it down. Goldberg just feared no wrong.
That's cheap, clean, and simple.
Rest in peace.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM. Coming to you once again from JM Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And yes, I'm a little bit late with my episode 91 here. Officially May 2nd, 2020 on this Saturday. Well, mostly because there wasn't much going on. I figured, well, let me see what else happens throughout Friday, and there were a couple of huge stories, but the others I felt were not enough to fill in my usual time of about an hour or so. So I figured let me try to collect as many stories as possible, and sure enough, a few of them broke throughout the day. Nothing too serious, but enough to catch one's attention and worthy of discussing here. But for now, let's update the upcoming Money in the Bank ladder match. Well, let me rephrase that. The upcoming WWE Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And there are a couple of ladder matches expected to take place. Matter of fact, they've already been pre-taped for the past week or so. And they're scheduled to air on the WWE Network next Sunday. Is climbing the corporate ladder for both the men and women's Money in the Bank ladder match. The women's side of things have been filled. Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax, Asuka, Dana Brooke, Lacey Evans, and Carmella all qualified for the women's ladder match. Over on the men's side, looks like there's going to be a sort of a second chance match coming up on Raw to replace the now written out of the match Apollo Crews, who suffered a leg injury during his match for the United States Championship this past Monday against Andrade. But as of right now, it stands as Daniel Bryan, Aleister Black, Rey Mysterio, King Corbin, Otis, who qualified last night on SmackDown, and a superstar yet to be determined. All this according to WWE.com. Also expected on the show. First of all, not too many matches. You have these two ladder matches, which I'm sure will take up a lot of time, give it an average 40 to 45 minutes. But then you have, for the WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre taking on Seth Rollins. For the Universal title will be Braun Strowman defending for the first time on pay-per-view, quote unquote, against Bray Wyatt. Not The Fiend, but Bray Wyatt. And for the SmackDown Women's title, will be Bayley taking on Tamina. Interesting. So again, that's a total of 5 matches. I seriously thought they're going to cut this in 2 nights. Doesn't make any sense to do that, but see who else and what else that they add, considering who is available at their disposal, those who don't want to leave their homes for obvious reasons, despite the report from last week that a employee of WWE named John was indicating that everyone's being forced to work. And of course, WWE denied all this. Anyone at any time is free to go home if they're already in the buildings, whether it be the Performance Center or Forsyth University. And anyone has the right to say no if they're getting a phone call and say, hey, we need you at TV for Monday or Wednesday or Friday for tapings, they could say no. They have that right and freedom to say no, according to the WWE statement. So I guess a failed attempt to open up the floodgates there for WWE, allegedly forcing everyone to work. Honestly, I never felt that impression. Probably the biggest example is Roman Reigns. So he said no, just mere days before WrestleMania was taped. Matter of fact, I believe it was the same week that right after he had that face-off with Goldberg. A couple of days later, they were scheduled to have the WrestleMania tapings, and Roman Reigns said, "Oh no, I need to go home. There's more than just my health going on." Basically, we will later find out that his wife is expecting twins. So there's a lot on his plate right now, and he's very vulnerable. His immune system is shot to hell after what he's gone through with his previous health issues. Who would blame him at any point? So with that said, he's a top guy. He's a main eventer. I've always heard arguments about, well, one of the main eventers needs to step up before anyone else that's mid-card or lower card needs to step up and ask or want the same thing. Well, there you go. And once again, another advantage is a lot of the roster, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, a lot of them live within the Orlando and Tampa Bay area. So it'd be a little easier to go home. I know a lot of other talent have to fly in, especially from the West Coast, and that can be overwhelming at times. Even though, well, it's different for everybody. But I've noticed Shelton Benjamin, for example, he would Instagram a few photos showing off how empty his airplane that he's riding on, or flying on, I should say, to head over to and from the Performance Center, how empty it is. Basically, the last picture I believe was he and maybe 3 other passengers in the background, all spread out in random seats. Nowadays, things are picking up. There are state officials that are working on getting basically their states and other parts of the country reopened again. Some of them feel that it's time, despite still ongoing health concerns for everyone because of the pandemic. And they're going to have, especially out here in the state of Florida, have phases to open up the state back again for business. And I was thinking I'll probably get to this later on, but phase 1 officially begins for the state of Florida this coming Monday. And part of it, besides smaller businesses, with the exception of bars, bowling alleys, gyms, they will remain closed because this phase 1 is basically more of a testing phase, where bigger buildings such as an arena, for example, Amalie Arena, as big as Raymond James Stadium, where the Bucks play, and all medium-sized or smaller-sized businesses between that are going to be allowed to reopen on Monday. To have the owners, managers, what have you, that are running the building to have 25% capacity for guests, for clients, for customers, what have you. And that includes the employees. That includes anyone that's already working for the building. And that also includes WWE and AEW, if they, no official statement as of this recording, but neither AEW or WWE have commented, but according to the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, he's going to allow the reopening of arenas throughout the state of Florida. But again, at only 25% capacity. So whatever capacity that they would hold now without the staging setup and the ramps and all that, maybe less. And knowing WWE especially, they'll probably intentionally make their settings, make their entrances even as small as what they're using now for the Performance Center for Raw and SmackDown, intentionally just to get as many people in there as possible that still adds up to 25% capacity for the arena. Anyone's welcome to do the math on that part. So that's the news as far as what's going on here in relations to pro wrestling in general. Other smaller promotions such as MLW, ROH have decided not to pretty much take the open invitation. They prefer their athletes' health over running shows at this time, and I applaud them for that. AEW have taken precautions despite having the ringside occupied with their own talent to make up a crowd, really not practicing social distancing. But at this point, it hasn't been already. All those rules have been thrown out the window. So it is what it is. And at the end of the day, it's still a business. Not an essential, but a business nonetheless. So we'll see who budgets first. We'll see who makes that first announcement, either AEW or WWE over the weekend, to make that first announcement that in this part of Florida, this arena will open up on this day. Tickets will be on sale and blah, blah, blah. The slow reopening process has begun. And I'm more curious to see how many are going to take up the invitation, so to speak, from the Florida governor. In other news, this you can take for what it's worth. I just happened to come across it while scrolling through Twitter. It came out earlier today, matter of fact, right off the NoDQ.com Twitter account, as apparently Hannibal TV has conducted an interview with the ex-girlfriend of the Macho Man Randy Savage, Gorgeous George from WCW. And fun fact, she literally has like a 1-second cameo in the Sammy Raimi Spider-Man. If you don't know where that scene is exactly, right as Peter Parker signing up to have his wrestling match, he's talking to one lady, and right before she tells him something along the lines, may the Lord be with you, or something like that. May God be with you. And we don't see Parker, but we see the back of him, and as he walks away and heads towards the backstage area, there's another lady sitting to the first lady, who's not looking up. She's just looking down, writing in some paperwork. This blonde chick, and that's Gorgeous George. How and why? Well, because Randy Savage was in the same movie, who beat the crap out of Spider-Man. But I don't remember Gorgeous George having another movie appearance or even a cameo after that. But apparently she had an interview with Hannibal TV, and it's up on YouTube. And according to NoDQ.com, and a lot of us are familiar with this story, this rumor, let me specify as a rumor, that for many years, many have speculated that Randy Savage had a relationship with Stephanie McMahon when she was still a teenager. And Vince did not find out about this until years after the fact, and long after he bought out WCW back in 2001. And once that story hit the airwaves to that point, with those details, and that hit the internet, that led many to speculate that's the main reason why Vince never allowed Randy Savage to be inducted to the Hall of Fame at that time period. And that, now that he's passed away, we can induct him now. Then again, if Randy Savage was still with us and he was inducted, when was it, a couple of years ago, I seriously doubt during his accepting speech that he would bring up that rumor, that he would bring up that alleged relationship that he and Stephanie had backstage that no one was aware of. Could have sworn I've heard stories that Vince would have, metaphorically speaking, but he would have hawks on Stephanie at all times before she even had an office position with the company, and that no harm had come to her at all. So According to the interview with Gorgeous George, and this is a quote from said interview, when asked about if Randy Savage had ever brought up this rumor, this story to Gorgeous George during their relationship, Gorgeous George says, "Oh, he told me. He told me one day when we were on ecstasy on the beach. I think he didn't mean to tell me. And then the next morning he goes, 'Did I tell you something last night on the beach?' And I'm like, 'Yeah, he sure did.' He knew exactly what he said. And he was like, 'Shit.' Because it was those kind of truth drugs. And once he got on that, he started telling me everything. She knows and he knows what it all was. Now, at that point, she didn't get into much detail as far as exactly what Macho Man said to her, other than that, all he told me. So many will speculate that what Gorgeous George is saying, that Savage basically confessed on whichever day that this was on the beach while on ecstasy. I never been on the stuff. I never been around the stuff, nor do I ever even plan to have anything to do with this stuff. I've seen a lot of effects of it during my previous careers. Not too sure if it would act as a truth serum. I wouldn't know. If anyone knows out there, please let me know in the comments. But at the same time, many would compare this like, well, if Macho Man was under the influence of alcohol, for example, would he have done the same thing? Just out of nowhere, decides to share a story that Gorgeous George was next to him or walking down the beach or whatever exactly they were doing, and just spill his guts of having this alleged relationship, a romantic relationship with Stephanie McMahon when she was still a teenager. All we know is Macho Man's not here to defend himself. He's not here to back up this claim. Stephanie has been asked numerous times about this rumor. She's never admitted nor denied it ever happened. Why I still do that, I do not know. There was even which DVD was that? Was it the McMahon DVD or might have been the Macho Man DVD? But a few years ago, they came out with this DVD set, and it wasn't asked straight out, but it was in the trailer for it about rumors and speculations that Stephanie might have had a relationship with the Macho Man. And even then, she doesn't straight out answer it. They just dance around it. Of course, you will find out that was more for attention and publicity to get everyone to buy the DVD. And this is right before the network came out. And that particular episode is on their streaming service if you want to check it out. Personally, I don't think it did not happen. Too much time has gone by. And again, Macho Man, Randy Poffo, he's no longer with us. His brother, Lanny, has defended him throughout the years. And as far as the Genius goes, even he's never confirmed nor denied it. So the story, just this rumor, grew so big over the years that it's just too good not to let it die out, not to just flat out give a straight answer and move on with life. This is getting it just as big as the Montreal Screwjob. We've gotten answers for the past 20 years of who was involved, who finally admitted it, that was part of it, who benefited from it, who were victims of it, and all points in between. That was back in 1997, and people are still asking Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Jim Ross, who screwed Bret? Why did Vince screw Bret? Why couldn't Bret drop the title then and there and give his goodbye speech the next night on Raw, as is allegedly supposedly attended to happen, as far as Bret Hart leaving for WCW. And it's just it's not brought up as often, but when it is, it just won't go away for a while. But again, I don't believe it happened. It's just one of those internet myths, like Slender Man or Smiley or whatever that other creepy pastas are out there. And yes, I'm comparing this story between Macho Man and Stephanie as a creepy pasta, because think about it. If this really happened, Macho Man would have been twice her age, give or take. And she was still a teenager. And considering what's developed since then in society and what's written in laws, hypothetically speaking, Macho Man dating a 17-year-old or having some kind of relationship, intimate, physical, whatever, with a 17-year-old Stephanie McMahon. You wouldn't think that Macho Man Randy Savage, Randy Poffo, would have been registering as a sex offender? I hate to say that. Well, he definitely would have served jail time. I like to believe, at least from those who do believe that this story might have happened, allegedly, not to tarnish the legacy or the name of the Macho Man Randy Savage. Just leave it alone. Let's move on. But you know what? Tease the shit out of it every time it's brought up. Maybe it happened. Maybe it didn't happen. One side of the story will never be heard, that's for sure. The other, no different than what they said on that DVD. And I wish I knew exactly which one it was. I know I have it somewhere because I listened to it, and I'm sitting there like, are you guys kidding me? You just basically just like I said, just danced around it and put no frame of mind into it to give us some kind of closure or some kind of definitive answer to what happened. But on top of all this, you got Gorgeous George admitting that she and Randy Savage were both on ecstasy on this day on the beach, and on the oath, I'm pretty sure one of their lawyers would have gone through hell and high water to get them off and avoid anything in any way, shape, or form, I should say, to not let them testify for the fact that they were on ecstasy, to quote, admit to this story. So I don't trust this story any more than I can throw it, but I leave it to you guys. If you want to listen to it in its entirety, Hannibal TV interview with Gorgeous George. There's a cheap plug for it. Check it out. So a couple of mixed stories that happened during the week. Just to quickly run through a handful of them. But Cain Velasquez, who signed a 3-year deal with WWE earlier in the year. It might have been late last year. You know what? He only had two TV appearances. And yes, it was last year because his first appearance was the Fox debut of SmackDown, making an appearance, a quote, surprise appearance after Lesnar won back the WWE title from Kofi Kingston. And then just a couple of weeks later, challenged for the title at Super Showdown. And that was Cain Velasquez's one and only WWE match in the ring on a pay-per-view that lasted less than 2 minutes for the title. And now he's released from the company. So a little bit more of a spring cleaning, so to speak, as Dave Meltzer reported this back on Tuesday, that sure enough, Cain Velasquez has been released from his contract. More than likely falls under the 90-day no-compete clause and will not be allowed to wrestle anywhere in the world, pro wrestling-wise. He can go back to MMA. That's a whole different story. But what a waste of time And what a waste of talent. For what? For Lesnar to get his win back, so to speak, although it was under different circumstances and not more of a, I guess, sanctioned by a state athletic commission. But if it makes everybody feel better, Lesnar got his win back, retaining his title, and it is what it is. Velasquez will not be the only one released from WWE this week. Also, Curtis Axel, third-generation wrestler, son of Mr. Perfect, grandson of Larry the Axe, was released from WWE. With no rhyme or reason. He, and just like Velasquez, he got the same treatment of wishing them well in their future endeavors. And honestly, I thought Curtis Axel was tremendously underrated. I thought they had something for him when he had his first Intercontinental Championship run. He was a Paul Heyman guy. And many felt that, well, once you're a Paul Heyman guy, you're safe. I mean, look what he's done for Lesnar. Well, I guess there's an argument for CM Punk. But that ratio, that scale doesn't tip well if you're a Paul Heyman guy, because look what happened to Curtis Axel. After that IC title run, it was all downhill from there. Sure, he had a great run with Bo Dallas, part of the Mistourage. Entertaining, but as far as in the ring, wasn't given that much opportunity and time to really shine, especially towards the end of his career now, at least with the company. But it was a damn shame. I thought they really dropped the ball with Curtis Axel. Cody Rhodes, even throughout this craziness that's happening, apparently has been keeping an eye on intellectual properties of WWE and copyright names that they have or would use if they ever decided to. One being Cody Rhodes, his last name. If you haven't noticed, it's only been the Nightmare Cody on AEW, but never been announced as Cody Rhodes. Well, that's because the last name Rhodes, that's connected to Cody, is owned by WWE. Only until recently, as that copyright or that intellectual property has expired and was up for grabs. And sure enough, Cody swooped in last week, took advantage, and has now added the Rhodes name back to his repertoire. He wasn't announced this week as Cody Rhodes, although they'll probably save that for Double or Nothing. Next Saturday, I believe it is. As he is in the finals for the TNT Championship. And I believe I mentioned this last week as well, that it's too bad it's happening at this time period without any audience, without any crowd reaction. How amazing it would have been that the fans, when they realized that the ring announcer is mentioning Cody Rhodes' first and last name, and I believe that would have gone a pop. It's like, yes, he's finally complete. He's Cody Rhodes now, not just Cody. He's Cody Rhodes. Among other names, Cody Rhodes is keeping an eye on these names that are not so much WCW related, but names that more than likely his own father, Dusty Rhodes, could have came up with to use on WCW events or pay-per-views in the past. Seems like WWE has learned a lesson, because they have extended copyrights on licenses such as Slamboree and the term The Match Beyond, all WCW related and named by Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. Some of you are probably wondering why. Well, then why not? They have no rhyme or reason, WWE. They have no rhyme or reason to use these names, these terms anytime soon, especially for a pay-per-view or a specific match. Let them expire. Let them expire. Or maybe the concern or the argument would be like, well, they bought out the WCW video library. A lot of these NWA, WCW terms are used throughout, depending what you search for or what you're binging. That's not WWE related. And then you will have maybe a recent fan, and I'll say as recent as maybe 2-3 years. And now some of these names and terms are being used in AEW. Well, how's that possible? Aren't there lawsuits for this? Well, for a long time, many fans, even to this day, don't realize that names such as pay-per-views and your wrestling name, your wrestler name, they are copyrighted, they are licensed, but they expire. After a few years, they expire. What sucks is if they're just being hung in the back shelf somewhere, no one's using it. And you're not going to plan on using it anytime soon. Just let it expire, let it go. Let somebody put good use to it, such as Cody Rhodes and the Elite. They did that with Bash to the Beach, and you know what? It was a successful event. And you can bet you're down to your last penny that Cody and the Elite are going to do everything they can to keep that name for as long as possible. Keep an eye on their own copyrighted licenses. Vince McMahon is once again getting sued. I believe this will make his second lawsuit in 2 weeks. And it's coming from 2 WWE shareholders. I believe this is their own firm of Ryan Melhortz and Melvin Klein. I'm pretty sure I butchered those names. I apologize. But back on April 24th, these 2 WWE shareholders have filed a lawsuit against WWE and many of its top executives that include, of course, Vince McMahon, Stephanie, Paul Levesque, also known as Triple H, Frank Riddick III, and George Barrows, who's no longer there, who was fired a few months ago. He was one of the co-presidents in WWE. So it's a bit complicated, but try to stick with me. And others who have been following the story and others who had feelings about this from about less than a year ago. It was just a matter of time for something like this to catch up. And curious to see and hear about the outcome on this one. So it connects the relationship with WWE and, well, I've been calling it parts unknown because I refuse to mention the name of the country that Super Showdown's being held. So if you know what I'm talking about, then it's the relationship between that place and WWE. And the disappointing financial results that were released last week of the first quarter of 2020 earnings. So one of the shareholders put out a comment. Company's most senior executives and directors took advantage of WWE's inflated stock price to sell millions of dollars worth of their own WWE shares during this time period. In a single stock sale on March 27th of 2019, WWE's chief executive officer and chairman of the board, defendant Vincent Kennedy McMahon, sold more than 3.2 million WWE shares for over $261 million. And this sale occurred when they were only a few days away, a few days left in the company in 2019's first quarter, which insiders knew was experiencing poor financial performances, and despite growing behind-the-scenes problems with that country I refuse to name. And this statement and this lawsuit goes as far as even mentioning that when WWE wrestlers were held hostage, remember that? It was about a year ago. Held hostage on a tarmac. They couldn't leave because, well, they were having financial problems there. From what I remember of that story, a couple of televised media outlets cut the feed early from Super Showdown, and yeah, the people running the place were not happy. So what happens? Well, this alleged hostage situation took place, and supposedly or allegedly, not until a deal was reached would they let these WWE superstars go, and this was right before Survivor Series. And well, that disadvantage was NXT's opportunity to shine, but that's all kayfabe. So some of the wrestlers came out, I wasn't a hostage situation. I mean, of course they have to say that. But when you got two shareholders that runs a firm and they flat out say that the hostage situation, I mean, how else can you look at it? How else can it be taken as? But doesn't change the fact that once again, Vince McMahon has another lawsuit on his hands that he has to deal with, and who knows, from all the money that was mentioned that was saved that they're going to earn and profits and all this and that from last week's first quarter of 2020, hopefully it'll be more than enough to, if it goes to trial, and if McMahon is found guilty of any of these accusations or charges, yeah, hopefully there'll be enough left to still run WWE. Now, things are bad, and it's nothing new. But it's bad when you have a late night talk show host, in particular Conan O'Brien, who ironically has interviewed Vince McMahon, The Rock, Triple H, Sheamus, Roman Reigns, just to name a few guys. But he's interviewed them throughout the years on his show. And even he took a shot at Florida, considering or determining pro wrestling as an essential, more specifically WWE. And he put out his editors, his video media personnel. They put together this little 1.5, 2-minute video clip, basically mocking the fact that wrestling is an essential business, and he just doesn't get it. In so many words, he basically said that it was bullshit, and I still agree with that, and I still stand by that. That decision is bullshit. Okay, now things are changing, but during that time period, bullshit. And you can go over to teamcoco.com or the YouTube channel, and you'll find Conan shines a light on Florida's essential services, and that includes pro wrestling. The world we live in. Well, according to PW Insider, WWE has pushed back their Madison Square Garden show with no date announced this time. But the original show was supposed to take place back on March 22nd and set to feature a reunion of sorts with D-Generation X and the first ever NXT Women's Championship match. And that date was supposed to be on June 27th, but now all of that is scrapped. No word, no report as to when WWE would ever have a show in New York City's Madison Square Garden for Raw and SmackDown. But again, at this point, things are changing. Unfortunately, New York was not one of the states named to slowly reopen back the state and the city. For all we know, that might take a little while longer. Things are looking better. The line's been curved, it's been dropping, but unfortunately more and more of those getting affected by the illness is still being rushed to the hospital. So I hope the curve flattens even more, despite more people coming in being hospitalized, and that things work out for them. And in the long run, of course, to benefit everyone to, quote, get back to normal, whatever that's going to be. But unfortunately, right now, this is our new normal. How much of it is going to be influenced or changed by the time we get back to work, back to school, back to traveling, or whatever we normally do, how that world's going to look like. And despite all these changes, mixed in with what's going on now, and when in a few months or towards by the end of the year, that's going to be the new normal. A couple of more familiar names from the MMA world, such as Chuck Liddell, put out a statement having an interview with Sports Illustrated. Was it with Sports Illustrated or with the other one? Sports Illustrated. Chuck Liddell, the Iceman, quoted, "After lockdown, when the shows get on the road again, I'm not sure if I would want to do all the traveling that the guys do. But if one of the companies thinks that they have a cameo idea for me and want to get in touch with me, then I will definitely consider it." Now he's referring to a question that was asked about other MMA's fighters that will cross over between pro wrestling and going back and forth with MMA. It's not the first time he's considered it, but nowadays he's a retired Hall of Famer from the UFC. I think he can hang with everybody, anyone on the roster from WWE or AEW, like he puts it. If any company's interested, why not? And like I said, it could be a cameo. It doesn't have to be a long, stretched out storyline. It doesn't have to be like a Cain Velasquez, but look what happened to that. So if he's aware of what's going on with Velasquez, I might want to reconsider, but still be open-minded and say, hey, because that's the thing that a lot of these athletes that cross over from another sport, just because they're coming into, say, WWE, doesn't mean that they can't come in with their own ideas. You know, when Ken Shamrock first came in, back in 95, 96, and he tossed around Billy Gunn for a while, it was just straight out Ken Shamrock, former UFC champion. And it took a while for him to get in. And Shamrock already had pro wrestling experience at the time, but people knew him more from UFC. Even when Dan Severn, you wouldn't find too many matches where Severn will lose clean in WWE in that short run he had. And I look at Brock Lesnar, I'm sure he has tons of demands. So why should Chuck Liddell be any different, even if it is for a one-off cameo? So if he has ideas, because I seriously thought it would be an idea. Oh, what's my cameo? To get the shit beat out of him on an episode of Raw. If he's open for it, more power to him. Because he's willing to do business and take a shot in the back for everybody else. But just want to put that out there. You can come in with your own ideas. If you're A-Rod, for example, and want to take a swing at somebody's locker room because they disrespected you early on in the night during ringside, yeah, take a bat, bust up somebody's suitcase or a windshield or whatever of the rent-a-car, make a statement. May or may not carry over into a storyline, but knowing that could have been A-Rod's idea, I'll be fine with it. Just reminds me of the time when Tyson and Austin went at it the first time in face-to-face before WrestleMania 14. You're not going to tell me that Tyson didn't have his own ideas and his entourage might have stepped the bounds a little bit during the pull apart. Obviously, because clearly that whoever that was that wasn't paying attention. Somehow, when Tyson and Austin got into that break apart segment, and you got his entourage, somehow hundreds of dollars of bills went flying in the ring. A lot of people seem to forget that. I don't know if it was that guy's money or Tyson's money, but clearly you weren't paying attention, or maybe weren't in on it. But have shoes, hats, shirts getting ripped, yeah, those I expect to fly around. But money, legit, probably recently printed money, $100 bills. No, something's wrong there. And at that point, Tyson's been a long-time fan, so I'm pretty sure. I wanted to bet anything that he had his own insight and input to say, how about we try this? How about we do that? How about you say this to me and I react this way? Because imagine if Austin went into, quote, business for himself, flips off Tyson not once but twice. You think Tyson would take that laying down? Got to be crazy. Got to be cray-cray. There was a bit of a confusion over Gerald Briscoe. It was confirmed later on, but there was some confusion after Dave Meltzer reported that he was being released from WWE. Briscoe will go on his Twitter account later on and clarify that he wasn't released, he wasn't fired, he was furloughed. Furloughed. That's a funny word. He was furloughed from WWE. And no more details have come out since then, but this was back on Tuesday, by the way. But if everything's still set in motion the way it is, then he may return as soon as July 1st, just like anyone else that was furloughed by WWE. And that includes the majority of backstage agents, producers, what have you, referees, maybe. But again, there was some confusion, but thankfully Gerald Briscoe was able to clear that up. And hopefully he'll be back real soon. And get back to do his own thing. He's a Hall of Famer, and he used to have, matter of fact, this just reminded me that it was always mentioned during the Attitude Era about his body shop, Briscoe's body shop out in Tampa, Florida. I would come by, it was years after the fact, but I would come to find out that it was near my home. It's closed down now, but I didn't realize how close it was had I been around at that time, at that point in time. And I do have occasional car problems. I could have just walked in or pushed my car over to Briscoe's body shop and he could have worked on it. Small world. I mentioned that was another MMA's talent that's maybe having considerations for a crossover into pro wrestling. That being featherweight and bantamweight women's champion Amanda Nunes, who has been on this amazing 10-fight winning streak for either title. And although she's not interested now, but she also had an interview with Sports Illustrated. But maybe later on when I retire, I'm open to it. Why not? I could try something new. And she could fit right in. I mean, I believe another ball that was dropped as far as a potential character development or build on someone, that being Sonya Deville, who does have a legit MMA background. She's a student of the arts. Could have it started off that way, but somehow just made it more feminine, for lack of a better term. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's attractive, but still, I mean, you can still throw in some, like, what's the term, like features, you know, of a badass, or come out. I'm not saying make everybody look like or have characteristics like Ronda Rousey, no, but their own form of it, their own version of it. She's not making too many fans lately, but if you look at someone like Nia Jax, her size alone can be intimidating, and putting her in-ring skills at the moment off to the side. But she's not smiling anymore. Remember when she used to have that entrance on NXT? She'll come out, there'll be a close-up of her eyes. They will zoom out, pan out to the audience, and once they go back to Nia's entrance, she's all smiles. Not so much nowadays. Despite maybe she did, maybe she didn't botch that buckle bomb with Kairi Sane a couple of weeks ago. It's doable, and gotta take initiative. I would love to be a fly on a wall when creative has these meetings and bring up a specific person, let's say Nia Jax or Amanda Nunes if she ever comes in for a cameo. Okay, how can we bring her in? What's the pros and cons about her? How is she on the microphone? How does she relate to the fans or communicate with them? The thing about WWE nowadays is where any talent that's not too good on one feature, let's say mic skills or promos, they do a horrible job in hiding it. They just go out there, say this and that, because it's scripted and you have to memorize the lines, adding more pressure on the person and it's a 50-50 chance they'll screw that up. A lot's been said about Tamina. A lot's been said about Nia Jax not being good at all on a microphone, and I can understand that. But hide that. Don't put them on the microphone. And the go-to answer is not always have a mouthpiece for them. Otherwise, no one's ever going to speak on their own behalf. Less is always more. More than likely, the reason they're giving so much mic time or promo time to Asuka is because she's entertaining as shit. Half the time, I don't know what she's saying, but it's still entertaining. Sometimes when I do pick up on certain words that she does say in Japanese, oh, I know what that means. Oh, she just called you stupid. And that's awesome. Okay, how many people can get away with that besides Asuka? Well, and I realized this the other day, and I'm assuming it's done by design and intentional. So lately, I've been watching Raw and SmackDown with the SAP option to listen to the commentary in Spanish. Because let's face it, even though they got Samoa Joe back behind the microphone on Raw, the announce team, it kind of makes up for it a little bit, but not for 3 hours. So listen to the Spanish commentating. And Asuka, matter of fact, this past week on Raw, Asuka was cutting a promo in Japanese. Usually the American announce team would not translate because neither one of them would speak Japanese. But for some reason and somehow, by chance or luck, the Spanish commentators are literally translating what Asuka is saying. And it matches because of the reactions to her opponents. And it's like, wait a minute. Okay, yes, it's scripted. So was it translated for not only the Spanish, but the other international broadcast teams that now have to translate what Asuka's saying in different languages? I'm fine with it, but I just found that very interesting. So why doesn't the American audience or the American announce team do that for their audience? At least subtitles or something. Point being, Asuka may not speak proper English. She may not speak good English. But in so many words, she hides it by speaking in her language, by a body language, by mocking, by basically making fun of her opponents. And that turned into a meme right away when she had her match with Ruby Riott a few weeks ago. And as Ruby Riott's making her way into the ring, Asuka's dancing to a theme song. Now, if you don't find that entertaining, then there's something wrong there. But back to Amanda Nunes here. Yeah, she has a great following. She's a legit badass. I believe the second woman to defeat Ronda Rousey after Holly Holmes knocked her out. So, yeah, I would not suggest or put on the table, yeah, let's help Ronda get her win back. No. That would be bullshit. And just like Chuck Liddell, and whenever Amanda Nunes retires and then has consideration to jump into WWE's ring or AEW's or whomever, again, that she would come in with her own ideas and have some kind of knowledge of what happens or what works backstage behind the scenes in pro wrestling, and like not get involved with such nonsense. Like, oh, Ronda wants a win back, so let's just set up this 3-minute match where you lose. You know, to do something like that with Cain Velasquez is one thing. Cain Velasquez never had the following and the huge reputation that Amanda Nunes has. Then again, they're a few years apart. And that Amanda might have come in, I will say, 6-7 years later after Cain made his debut with UFC and dominated the heavyweight division. Just compare their win and loss records, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. AJ Styles is expected to appear on Monday Night Raw for the first time since WrestleMania, and hopefully we'll have like some kind of idea what's next for AJ Styles. The OC's broken up. Anderson and Gallows have been released from WWE 2 weeks ago, and so what's next for the Phenomenal One? Hopefully we'll find out this week on Raw. You probably didn't notice, but this week's NXT commentators was done from home. Mauro Rolano and Beth Phoenix were doing the play-by-play, the commentators from home. And, still had Todd Phillips in between segments as he was there live or in person. But you know what? It works. It really works. They started with the idea this week, and again, if you didn't realize or notice it, it would have went off without a blemish for calling the matches from home, and this saves them from traveling to Orlando bi-monthly. Todd Phillips is now the third man in the booth, so to speak, despite Nigel McGuinness choosing to stay home and look out for his family. Nothing wrong with that. Since the commentators don't show up as much as they would on Raw and SmackDown, WWE felt that they'll be able to make this change without interfering too much with the shows either. All this according to the Wrestling Observer. And why wasn't this idea brought up sooner to maybe have it work for Raw and SmackDown? I mean, obviously, SmackDown and Raw are being taped at the Performance Center. NXT went back to Full Sail University. I would like to know what the details were, especially with Full Sail, because they shut down completely. Send the students home, no other types of shows, anything running at all when the stay home order was in play about a month ago now. But I think it's a good idea for now until everything clears up a little bit more. Despite I mentioned earlier about businesses opening up slowly, that the governor's going to allow at 25% capacity arenas or any such venues. Curious to see how much they're going to fill up Full Sail University, and because of that, how much of the audience can fill up the Performance Center. Maybe start off slowly and only invite those that they know, such as family and friends that are close to the talent. See how that works out, how that looks like. But kudos. I mean, better late than never, I guess, to find more safer ways to work from home and still get a paycheck out of it. Jeff Hardy, who's not been on scene on TV for a few weeks now, although they've been showing his WWE 24/7 documentary piece by piece every week on SmackDown. But he was a guest on WWE's After the Bell podcast with Corey Graves and was asked about his career, about he being the first opponent for Brock Lesnar, saying, one thing I had forgotten when I did WWE backstage out there in LA, they've asked me about Brock Lesnar. I totally forgot I was his first match in WWE, and I would love to get my ass kicked by him again, because he's just intimidating and insanely gifted. To be successful as he was in the MMA world, he's amazing. That'll be interesting. Maybe that could be my last match. I was his first match. He'll be my last match. So that'll be interesting, especially how both he and Lesnar have evolved, so to speak. Lesnar wouldn't be the same wrestling machine as he was back in 2002 compared to his now more vicious MMA style fighting grappler. And Jeff Hardy hasn't changed his move sets much, hasn't added much to his repertoire other than being more and more Daredevil-like, jumping off higher points once in a while. But as a send-off, you know what? It'll make sense. It'll be like a bookend, so to speak, for the career of Jeff Hardy in WWE. But it'll be a while because Lesnar is no longer with WWE, according to Vince. We don't have Lesnar anymore, obviously. Vince's words. Although, again, it's been reported that Leslie's contract does not expire between now and the end of June. Someone else that's been MIA since WrestleMania is Kevin Owens. I'm sure many have noticed. That's because he suffered an ankle injury during his match with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Owens had an interview with RDS in Quebec and acknowledged that he disclosed an ankle injury during the match. It's unknown exactly at what point during the match it happened, but in the interview, he said that he'll be getting x-rays real soon to determine how severe the injury is. And he's been away from WWE programming ever since WrestleMania. So it's likely he will go through some kind of healing and or rehabilitation for his leg and ankle injury before he can compete again. And it really sucks because Kevin did have momentum after Mania, and it kind of makes a little bit more sense now why Seth Rollins was almost immediately pushed into a title picture the day after Mania, and now he has a title match coming up with Drew McIntyre. I'm not saying it would have been Kevin Owens, but not the first time you see a main event heel losing a big way at a Mania event, and then the next week or the next day on Raw, he's in a title match. You guys figure that out, man. I don't know. I'm done with that. Another injury to report: Jimmy Uso, who was also apparently injured at WrestleMania during his triple threat ladder match with Kofi Kingston and John Morrison for the tag team titles. Don't ask. But apparently Jimmy Uso is going to be out from anywhere to 6 to 9 months due to a knee injury. And that surgery will be required. So the Usos are once again out of the picture after they just returned, just earlier on in the year? I mean, don't get me wrong. Injuries happen, and it sucks. It's even worse when it happens, and you just came back to the company less than a couple of months ago. Especially if you're a tag team. If you suffer, your partner, or in this case his brother, may be injury-free, but the idea was to have the tag team back, not just one Uso. You know what? I feel for them. They came back with a new look. They got haircuts. They got a different in-ring attire. They added Naomi into the mix. Would have been interesting had they ever crossed paths with the Street Profits and Bianca Belair go at it with Naomi, but that may or may not happen anytime soon. But here's to hoping to Jimmy Uso to get well soon. It really sucks. It was reported that it happened during the match, obviously, but specifically, I should say, where Kofi Kingston whipped a big-ass ladder into Jimmy Uso's knees, as quoted over at Legal Foreign Object Twitter account at IFO Wrestling on Twitter. So a big-ass ladder was swung, so if you want to go back to see exactly when that happened, that's more than likely where Jimmy Uso's injury took place. So get well soon, Jimmy Uso. And as I mentioned earlier, the reopening task force of Florida to take place under phase 1, only 25% of capacities of any venue, arena, stadium, what have you. But again, everything is baby steps. So I believe I covered just about everything, but I'll end with this. Looks like Becky Lynch is going to have quite a few opportunities, especially during and maybe even after her pro wrestling career. But it was announced earlier today that Becky Lynch will make an appearance on the upcoming season of Billions. It's a series that appears on Showtime. I'm not too familiar. Oh, actually, I'm not familiar with it at all. But Becky Lynch is scheduled to appear on an upcoming episode. Matter of fact, I got my cable running in the background. Let me see if there are any reruns taking place now. Doesn't seem to be. Gotta be something, guys. Help me out here. No. Okay. Well, point taken. Again, I'm not familiar with the show. I seriously doubt if it is TVMA, the rating for the show. I seriously doubt WWE is gonna spend any time in promoting it, doing Raw, or even on their social media pages. Maybe on Becky's Twitter account for sure, but anywhere else, because it's TVMA. They want to keep a family, kid-friendly environment for their shows, even though Drew McIntyre dropped a shit bomb this past week during the contract signing with Seth Rollins. But overall, obviously they're avoiding mentioning any F-bombs or anything more offensive in nature beyond F-bombs. So they clearly do not want to do that. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. And I'm not suggesting if Becky Lynch, again, because I'm not familiar with the show, and if it is TVMA, I'm not suggesting that Becky Lynch is going to appear on whichever episode, and that's just going to be nude or anything like that. I don't know. I'm not aware, so I'm not saying either case. However, because it might be a TVMA rated show, Becky can curse her ass off. And we might see Becky Lynch, obviously, in a different character, not as, Becky Lynch, and whatever name her character is going to be. Could be and might be cursing her ass off, and it's not something that WWE, I'm pretty sure, would not want to promote. So unless you scroll around through your usual sources and come across, oh, Becky Lynch is going to be on this Showtime TV show, let's check it out. So it might be a kickstart for her. Maybe she got bit by the acting bug. Who knows? But that does not end there. It was mentioned earlier in the day that Becky Lynch has been receiving tips, not acting tips, but more like how it works behind the scenes in Hollywood, so to speak, from The Rock and Dwayne Johnson. By the way, shout outs and happy birthdays to Dwayne Johnson and Valet Anawani, daughter of Afa, Hall of Famer. Happy birthday. And besides the tips received from Johnson and Cena, Becky Lynch is expected to appear in one of the upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. At this time, it's unclear as to which one it is, especially since everything's been either delayed or halted in production. The Black Widow movie was supposed to drop in the next couple of weeks. Even despite having the slowly reopening of businesses, movie theaters, unfortunately, is not one of them. So for all we know, it could still be pushed back another month or so, but a lot of them have been pushed back almost a year, including John Cena's upcoming action movie, the F9 function button, or in other words, the 9th Fast and Furious movie with Vin Diesel. That was supposed to drop, matter of fact, I think this month as well, in the month of May. And it was announced weeks ago that film was going to be pushed back an entire year. So every Fast and Furious fan gonna have to wait another year to find out exactly, after 9 movies, Dominic Toretto apparently has a brother that we never heard of, and it's John Cena. Imagine that argument. You can't see me. You can't see me. Whatever, barbecue. With my family. Ride or die. You can't see me. Okay. So, but regardless, it's a good opportunity for Becky Lynch. I'm not personally aware if she's interested in an acting career. Again, whether it's during or after, or both, in a pro wrestling career, but kudos. I mean, of course, not always being the man and not always been on top, as right now the Raw Women's Champion, and for a while was Becky Two Belts. And there was a time where I think it got so bad for her. Not only that they didn't know what to do with her, they had her off television for a long time. And had she not snapped the way she did a couple of years ago at SummerSlam against Charlotte Flair, her best friend, and storyline-wise, as shady as that was, when Charlotte just came back, got put into the title picture that year, both women lost, and Becky just snapped because the fans knew it was Becky's time. You know, especially that year's Royal Rumble, where the first time she and Asuka met for the SmackDown Women's title at the time. And then, wait a minute, I think I'm getting my events mixed up here. But it was that SummerSlam for a couple of years ago where she snapped on Charlotte Flair and Natalya. And the crowd just erupted. And from that point on, slowly evolved into the man. And that momentum went into the following Royal Rumble, the first meeting between her and Asuka for the SmackDown Women's title, surprisingly tapping out, and everybody was like, "What? Wait, what?" So there was some concern there from the fans after building so much momentum, but Becky still came out. Besides physically busting her ass, but also on the microphone, like really revved that up a lot, cranked that volume up to 20 plus. And was still able to get into the triple threat main event of last year's WrestleMania. And earlier this year was able to avenge and get her win back over Asuka at the Royal Rumble. So things were coming full circle. Things have come full circle for Becky Lynch. And now the possibility of having a part-time acting career, I think is great. So kudos, and I hope it works out for her. Curious to see exactly which MCU movie she's going to appear in. I'm more curious to see now, whenever this episode of Billions drops and it has Becky Lynch in it. Well, let's see what she has. It's one of those 1 hour long episodes, so I'll definitely check it out, and I'll see if I can give my opinion on the next episode of the Jam Report that week. So with that said, if you like what you heard, click that like button, click on the notification bell, leave a comment. You can follow me throughout social media as it's mentioned in the description. As always, I'm going to try my best to be here every week for the Jam Report. Usually on Fridays, but, you know, life happens, so I'm dropping it here now on a Saturday. And I'll definitely have the final rundown for Money in the Bank pay-per-view on the next episode. Everybody, be safe, be good, be healthy, be nice. Till next time.
To open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind and realize that your beautiful world could take my life. And I'm sinking under, drowning faster. Please just let me breathe.